Mike Lindell, thank you for joining us on the Illinois channel. So good to see you. And of course, everyone knows who you are. We see you constantly on our television sets. You're the CEO of My Pillow. And we want to talk to you today on so many things because you have such a fascinating life. And I think people know a bit of it, but they probably don't know part of it. In fact, I'm going to talk a little bit later. I thought in researching some of your life that this ought to be made into a movie, and then I heard that you actually are thinking about having a movie made about your life.
Yeah, it'll be done in spring of 2022. It'll be out.
So have you selected who's going to be portraying you in the movie?
I'm doing it myself. I'm going to play number 4. I'm going to have 4 mics in there. There'll be 3 earlier ones, and then I'll be the one from January 16, 2009 on.
Before we get ahead of ourselves, let's cover that you started My Pillow before you, and then you people probably know you were addicted to drugs and I think alcohol perhaps as well, and you started your business before you reached your sobriety, and you, as I understand your story, you became sober back in January of 2009. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's back up and say, how did you start your business? Because you were one of these people. I love entrepreneurs, and I think you were kind of a serial entrepreneur. Were you not, starting a number of different businesses first?
Right. It goes back to I was, I guess one of my first businesses was I had my sister flooded a 3rd-story building of an apartment complex, so I became a carpet cleaner. I worked on my uncle's farm, and he was raising pigs, and I said, you know what, I'm going to make the money. So I went and bought the feeder pigs and put them in basically a rural neighborhood, and started raising my own pigs, and then I had a lunch wagon business. I had little bars and restaurants. I had all kinds of different businesses, and yeah, it was a serial entrepreneur. I had one bar though for 13 years, and I learned a lot about business there and about people's what people resonated to and resonated with, and I invented My Pillow in 2004, and actually that was after I had sold the bars. By the way, I was also a professional card counter. That kind of strung through my life too. So I've done quite a bit of different things. I keep thinking of more things here. It's like if something came along, I'd see a problem solution and different things, and I would pursue it, and I would go all in. I love doing the due diligence part. I loved figuring out. I tell you, if there's any entrepreneurs or out there, and one of the things is that beginning, learn from people, like business that you trust, and really learn that what their deviations were, what they're bad and good, and obviously that's any good business, learning by your deviations. Focus on your good ones and expand on them, and your bad ones learn from.
I was going to ask, I think that's all good advice. And in looking at there's some interesting videos that you have on some of your websites. And one of the things I looked at was this program that was taped at it's almost like the Ralph Edwards, This Is Your Life, where you had people from your past come out and kind of comment on how they knew you. Some were pretty funny. But that was a fascinating thing to watch. I wanted to ask, a number of them said what a good business person you were, and it came off to me, and I think this is fascinating. Let's talk a little bit for all those entrepreneurs or people who think they want to have a business. First of all, do you think, number one, are entrepreneurs born or made, do you think, along the way? And the other thing, before you answer, I think one of the things that struck me is that it's your personality. It's Mike's personality that you have such enthusiasm. And your story is one of a series of miracles. And it just seemed like constantly it was your enthusiasm that would turn the tide in your direction, because people just couldn't believe how over the top you were for your product.
Yeah, and that's I think when you ask that question about entrepreneurs, are they made or are you born with it? maybe a little bit of both, but I think anybody's passion. I tell that to entrepreneurs all the time. Go where your passion is, and if you take a chance. I mean, before this pandemic here, there were entrepreneurs with our great consumer confidence taking chances on business and service business and inventing things, and because they could fall back on a high paying job. But I think people ask me all the time. They go, Mike, you work so hard, and I go, no, I don't. I said, addiction's hard work. I said, I love what I'm doing, and like you say, I wouldn't give up. I would actually try different businesses until I made it, and then I might get, what, I'm gonna go over here. I don't think I ever failed at any of the businesses. I just got them to a point, and then that was a season, and then I went and did something else that I was more passionate about, and then I ended up finding my calling, which surprised me, which would be where my pill is just a platform for God, and I'm out evangelizing and speaking and helping people with addiction, from based off my story. But I just think any entrepreneur, if you're not doing what you love, it's not, if it's doing it just for the money, I'm a firm believer that the money follows the dream. You have the dream, you have the passion, and you got to do it right so you don't collapse. But then the money comes. That's what I view.
I will say that I have done, like probably any number of people, you've done early jobs in your life, and there were some jobs that I just hated. They were so boring, and yet to do what I do now, my ability to talk to individuals like you and meet fascinating people and share ideas, it's not work. It really is something. And with this COVID thing and carrying the president's briefing, I've been working 7 days a week here. But I tell you what, having worked at jobs before that were work, this is not work, and I endorse what you're saying.
Right. Yeah, it's I think different, and plus too with an entrepreneur, and I've said this before, and I'll reiterate. I think one of the most important things is those deviations I just said a little bit ago. Even with my company now, we focus every day, even if it's an individual. I view every part of my business and to focus, or if you have customers, I view every customer like it's my only customer, and that kind of attitude. You put passion behind each individual thing, so it's kind of like micromanaging and then macromanaging. But to learn the deviations, and if you see, like my pillow, we got so big so fast in 2011. I actually nobody would take my pillow anywhere, and no box stores or anything. I said, let's do I had done home shows and fairs for years, and I said, we're going to have this infomercial. We're going to bring it right to the people. It's going to be the biggest one in history. And I had all this passion, so I got all these people to believing in me. We all pooled our money, and we went to do this infomercial, and everybody said it couldn't be done, and you need an actor and all this. And we went to film it. Well, I couldn't talk in front of people. I have a big problem with that. And the night before we went to film this, and this producer was texting the other guy, and I was reading my lines. He said, "This is the worst guy I've ever seen. He'll never make it on TV." And we went to film the next day, and he's right. I was scared to death, and I'm looking at the teleprompter, and I'm seeing the audience, and I'm shaking, and fear of speaking in public. But this was like over the top. And we brought in a table, took away the teleprompter, and we did it naturally. Now, I went from on October 7, 2011, it aired in the middle of the night at 3 in the morning, that first infomercial. And I was living in my sister's basement with nothing left in the world. But we just exploded. We went from like 10 employees to 500 in 40 days. And just, but I took in $100 million over the next 6 months. And I had made all these deals with people, with that company, saying, "Is that the best you got?" And I told them that how much we were going to do. I knew that with my projections, I knew we were going to do that, but everyone else said, "That's impossible. That's impossible." So I made some bad deals, and other people took advantage of me, and I didn't track my media. Well, at the end of it, by 6 months later, I was $6 million in debt. I didn't have a bank. I didn't have nothing. It was devastating. But the point I'm getting at is that if 2012 did not happen, the spring of 2012, I wouldn't be sitting here right now, because I learned everything I am today. I learned from 2012. You know, it was a couple miracles there to regroup and get that $6 million taken care of that I owed. But I also took everything in house, and I started doing it my way. That I learned over the course of my life from deviations, and this was just a massive bad deviation. And I had to go, why did this happen? Obviously you need to, now I track every part of my media, I view every spot like it's my only spot. But the point being is I learned so much from a devastating time. I think we look back in our lives and we look back something that can be so devastating, and then you go, wow, if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be here but because I learned from it.
That's people. As you know, people will look at someone like yourself and they almost go, well, it was easy for you, as if your success and listening to so many stories, and I know from my father's story and my story of turning around a bankrupt printing business, and everyone hits hardship, and just look at where we are today with this COVID-19. Just before we started the interview, you're a manufacturer. It just came out. Reuters had a story that this was the worst numbers for manufacturing since 1946. So there's always challenges in life, whether it's in business or personal lives. And I think this is one of the lessons that we can learn from an individual like you. And I think people, maybe because of your previous drug addiction and all, they know that your life was not just an easy street. And we can learn from each other. And then that's, I think, what, in listening to your story and why we wanted to talk to you, you offer so much insights and frankly, hope, I think, for people that maybe look at you and go, if he can overcome all that he overcame in his life and have the success that he went from nothing, just your life crashed and burned, but you had a belief in yourself. How did you maintain? How did you not feel like I'm such a loser? Or maybe you did, that you had the faith in yourself to keep persevering.
Right. My story, with my book, it goes back, it took me 7 years to write, but it goes back to childhood. I came from a family in 1968 that divorced, and I was 7 years old, put into a new school, and I didn't feel like I fit in. I was the only kid. Divorces weren't common, and I was the only divorced kid. From a divorced family, and I didn't feel like I fit in. I would show off, or I wouldn't talk to people. I look back now in my book, I look back and I say, it was like I was fear of being rejected. I did have a self-worth problem. I was different. I'm failing, but I never had I can look back and say I always had hope, and maybe I don't know why, but it was just things would get so down, and then I would still I had 14 near-death experience, and not even counting them, and they were very scary. And I'd go, everything from falling asleep on a motorcycle to going skydiving to my parachute not opening, being trapped under the ice, being electrocuted. I mean, you name it, it happened. But it was the other things that what always bothered me is I wasn't, where I thought I could be in life. And like my 5-year class reunion, everybody had finished college and they had started families and they had started their own businesses. And here I had done nothing. I'd worked at a drive-in movie theater and a grocery store, and they I took over that reunion, and I'm telling everybody about, I owe the mafia $20,000 for betting on football, and I fell out of it, or I hit the ground 60 miles an hour with no parachute, partial open, and they're all having great stories of where they're at and talking about things that deep down. I got home that night, and I'm going, and I had a deep sadness that I wanted to be where they were, not where I was. And so I guess that kind of drove me. The self-worth thing did drive me too. I wanted to be, when I ended up selling my pillows, when I finally sold the first ones, like it was at the Minneapolis Home and Garden Show, and I sold all these pillows that day, the first day, that I was there. And the next day they all came back to me and go, wow, this pillow changed my life. And it made me feel good that I'd helped someone. It wasn't about the money. And then, boy, look out, it was, but I think it is hope. This story, by writing my book, it gives so many people hope, even though it's such a magnified, when I did quit all my drugs and crack and everything overnight, January 16, 2009, I made sure I didn't have any money left, but people say, was that your bottom? I knew my calling would be gone the next day. Wherever the path I went down would be, I didn't know where that was going, but I knew it'd be a really big, huge story of hope, and that actually drove me. I wanted to help people with my story, and I think right now, and this is probably a good time to interject this. Anybody sitting at home right now during this this terrible pandemic, we can make good out of it. And I said it from the White House to read our Bibles and spend time with our families. But there's another piece I want to put out there. Anybody out there that's made it through, that's gotten through, or let's say you're an addict that hasn't made it through, you're still addicted, let's say you're a 20-year-old heroin addict. Well, you've got your hope. I give you hope because of my story, but I'll tell you what gives you even more hope. People your own age that have made it through, and they have, about them, and that while they're off heroin, they're my same heroin or whatever, they're my same age, give them a call. Give them a call. Those are your hope matches, and ask them how they got through. And if you're a 30-year-old meth addict, same thing. Call them. Everybody knows people that have died, but we also know people that have made it through. And that's so important. I call them hope matches. And then if you're sitting at home and you've made it through, let's make this one of the biggest AA meetings ever. Let's call up everybody that that still is struggling. They're looking for hope right now. They're looking for hope. This is a time for the greatest revival ever. And I think with hope matches and making it this big AA meeting with Jesus Christ as our higher power, and the things that work in addiction, your Teen Challenge, Salvation Army, Union Gospel, but the basic principles are that it's addicts that have made it through, helping people that are broken to get through to where they're at. And it's funny because there's you talk about bureaucracy can get in the way of things. I've learned so much about politics, and there's 30 some states that have regulations where in order to be a counselor for addiction, you have to go to college 4 years, swim the English Channel, jump, climb 5 trees. I mean, all this regulation. Well, you know what? I don't want that person that's never been through it. I want somebody that's been through it and they've made it through. I want to hear from them. How did they do it? That's my hope. That's it.
I'll share, and I had an older brother who died in 2015, but he was a bad alcoholic for a number of years and became sober for the last 26 years or so of his life and rose to some of the heights of AA. And he used to say that he could not go longer than 11 days by himself being sober, but he was sober for like 26 years through AA. And I had often thought with his example, that if he had not been literally that fellow lying in the gutter, where I got a police call about how they picked him up drunk, he wouldn't know how to relate to those people he was counseling and whose lives he was helping. So that's so important to what you're saying. And, here we often cover the news on the Illinois Channel, but I also often reflect that what are the stories, what is the information we need in our lives that help us? This is some of the information, and the information that you bring. It's not just that you're a celebrity from an infomercial. It's that you have lived the life. And I've said, we just passed Easter. All of us carry a cross in life. We just carry different crosses. And your story and my brother's story, Ed, my brother, did become a counselor, a drug counselor, but he knew when people were BSing him, and he knew the truth, and he knew how to talk to them. So your point is correct, that how much what we say here can ring true, I hope, to those people who, for whatever reason, feel like they are broken people today and feel that there's no hope. And you've been there.
Right. And, and I view my view is that most addiction comes from childhood fatherlessness that's rampant. They took the families out of our and God out of our country, like I said at the Rose Garden. But I really believe, and then trauma. All these things can affect us. And by the way, I want to say, a lot of people perceive addiction as some addict on Skid Row out there in the streets. That's not true. Most of the addicts are all around us. No matter how many forks you eat with. I have been with people that eat with 4 forks and no forks from every spectrum, from the worst parts of this country to the best parts, or, subjectively. But you take them all, and there's addiction in all different forms. It comes in all different forms. And to be able to, you need hope. And I'm going to tell you, my perfect example was, I had went to treatment centers in the 80s and 90s to get my driver's license back, from DWIs or whatever it was. And I listened to those counselors and I couldn't relate to them because they'd never been through what I've been through, or they maybe been through less or more, And well, anyway, here comes in December of 2008, my friend came to me. I hadn't seen him in 4 years, and he was my hope match. He was my match in every way. We had both started cocaine at the same time. 20 years later, we both switched to crack. But he had been straight for 4 years, had found the Lord. And just out of the blue, he comes to my place I was losing, and I said, Dick, what are you doing here? He goes, the Lord led me here. He goes, what's going on? I had so many questions for him because, in the first one I said to him, I said, Dick, is it boring? He said, no, man, it ain't boring. Anything came out of his mouth, I drilled him for an hour on questions because I wanted to know all these questions I had that only he could answer. The closer I think we get to people that we can relate to, if there's an addict out there that's, I can't relate to him. He was an ex-crack addict. I think people relate more the tighter you get in age and the tighter you get in whatever the addiction is. And that you've been there and gotten through it. That's the whole concept. That's why you go back and address these wounds too from childhood. And that's what your faith-based treatment centers are all about in this country. You've got your Teen Challenge, your Salvation Army, your Union Gospels. These are ones that work because you go back and find out why you were an addict in the first place. I don't believe you're born an addict and it's some disease. I think that's the secular centers preying off our families going, your addict's a disease, your son, he's got a disease, you need to cash in your 401k and get it. Do you have insurance? We'll fix him in 30 days. It's just preyed upon, and it's sad because most of them don't work.
Let me ask, you became sober, I believe, in January 16 of 2009. I think actually, were you religious before? I think you would credit religion. I think you would credit Christ for your recovery. And as I understand your story, it was sudden. It was like from one day to literally the next day, you went from being an addict to being sober. Actually, there's a funny story where you go in and ask people for money, and they say, well, how long have you been sober? And you go, since last Thursday. It was fun.
Yeah, they said, well, when did you quit crack? It was some big CFO guy. There was 8 of them in the room. There was all these suits in there, and the CEO and a CIO, all these, and I was 7 days out of addiction. The one guy goes, well, when did you quit crack? I said, last Thursday. 4 of them got up, left the room. But that was just a favor. That was such favor there. What happened to me was, I always believed in God, and you see me wearing my cross on TV. I was attacked for that too. I mean, people come after you for everything that's, it's sad, but I was attacked for that. I wore my cross when I wasn't on TV. I wanted to be that guy. I would tell my friends about, hey, you guys, we'd be after the bar closed, and we'd be doing lines of cocaine. I said, you know what? I read about God, the Bible. I was reading Revelation. I was telling about end times and different things. And they'd end up quitting and finding God. And the next day I'm going, what did I say? I'm losing friends. I actually had 28 people that had quit. If you can track back over in my book, that had quit, their last day ever was me witnessing to them when I didn't even have a relationship myself with God. But I didn't want to, I had the belief, but it was just, I only reached out basically when things were bad. Hey, God, get me through this. I know that I don't have anything left, and I'm trapped here in Mexico. They're cutting my head off, but could you get me out of this? I'll change. And so on January 16, 2009, people say, "Was that your bottom?" And I say, for me, yeah, I had no money left and no things left, but that had happened so many other times. I think for me, it was instinctively, I knew that one more day I didn't get to control. God was going to have someone else for my calling, or what I was really put on this earth to do. And so that night, I basically said, I want to wake up in the morning, God. I never want to have the desire for any alcohol, drugs, or anything again. And I'll do this, this calling, this platform. And I knew what I was, I would always tell my drug dealers that, in fact, they did an intervention on me. And because they didn't want me to die, because I would tell them, hey, you guys, I'm going to quit someday and come back and help you all. God, this pillow thing is just a platform for God. And they believed me. And, two of them worked for me. Now they're born again Christians. So it's come full circle. But that morning I woke up and the desire was gone. I woke up and going, what? Something's different. It was like Groundhog Day going, something's different. I'm all excited. But I want everybody out there to say that was a miracle. We all have miracles in our life. In fact, my book, What Are the Odds? You have a 1 in a million, a 1 in a billion, and something that never happens anywhere. And you add them together. When do you consider it a miracle? Well, I knew right there I had just experienced one, but still 2 months later, and I think this is important, I went to a faith-based treatment center through our church, and I found out something there. I'd been at all these treatment centers before, and here I found out why I was an addict in the first place, or at least some of the reasons. And some of these seeds were planted that, hey, that divorce affected you so much as a 7-year-old kid, putting into a new school, and I didn't fit in. Everybody else had families, and I was the only divorced kid from a divorced family, and I went through my life with a fear of rejection, and I think a lot of people do. They want to fit in, and then drugs and alcohol and overeating, all this, anything can mask pain, and it could also give you false courage. It could mask depression, anxiety, all kinds of stuff, and it's just self-medicating where you got to get down to the roots of, hey, I'm a good person. If you don't, for me, it was, I didn't talk to people. If you'd have told me I'd be talking, that was my calling, I would have said, that ain't happening. I thought I didn't like small talk, but I had fear of rejection. You can't get rejected if you don't talk to people. And anyway, so those seeds were planted then. And then if you get my book, you got to go all the way up to February 18, 2017, where I actually did a full surrender to Jesus. And then it was game over. Now it was like, I could go out and speak to stadiums of 50,000 people like I did in Minnesota to millennials and speak out for Jesus and tell my story. Like it's no longer, this isn't about the pillow. This is about the biggest revival. It's about salvation, redemption, and everything else. And it's been very easy for me to it's brought it to a whole new level,
Let me run over a couple of things you just said that were interesting. One, that you initially had said that you couldn't talk in front of people when you did your infomercial, and now you were just speaking in front of 18,000 people or so. That's one. And the other thing, did you say that your dealers became born-again Christians now?
Yeah, absolutely. That story, and so did a lot of my friends, almost all of my friends. I don't know one that's still on drugs.
Can I interrupt in one hand? I want to say, in your comment, I want to ask, one hand, we all have an ego. And to what extent, I think a lot of people, it's like they can't get over their own ego. I think when I look at my brother's example, and sometimes you have to be broken down before you can be rebuilt because your ego gets in the way. How do you're a friend of the president's, and what's one of the things that's unusual about the president is that we knew him for decades before he became president. That's rare. And one of the things Donald Trump said as a businessman back around the 90s was, wallflowers don't accomplish much. And he meant that, unless you have a big ego, you're not going to build a $100 million skyscraper in New York City. You don't do that unless you have an ego. But how do you, and look what you've built and this empire of My Pillow, you obviously have confidence, you have your ego. But I'd like to hear, how do you balance your ego and at the same time say, I surrender my life to Jesus? I think that's where a lot of people on that crux get hung up.
Right. Well, mine shifted. You know, now Jesus is the chairman of the board, and I can be very proactive in prayer. He runs all my stuff. I just pray about it. I'm proactive in what I can do now in prayer. Before, I always thought, wow, I'm so smart. I can get through anything. You know, back in the day when I had 14 near death experience, and I'm not even counting like here I am in Mexico, and I'm getting my head cut off by a cartel member on just a trip that I'm going on with some friends, and or having guns to my head in some of the worst places in the United States. I'm not even counting that, but I would get complacent, or I would lose everything and go, okay, I'm going to be, boy, it was almost like a challenge. I'm going to get out of this, and I'm going to get out of this, and it was you get to 2008, and my sister said to me, she goes, God's got a big plan for you, and He gave you a gift, and you can't keep standing in front of semis. Meaning, you can't just, I got like, wow, I can do anything because it seems like I can get through anything because I'm so smart, and that was my own. But deep down, I didn't feel, all this unworthiness, and I didn't feel good about myself. If you read in my book, when I do that full surrender, one of the things is I forgave myself for things I did in the past. And some of them were so shameful. One of the things was so shameful in the 80s that I was shamed on TV. I mean, everyone thought, wow, that I was the worst guy ever. And here I couldn't tell people what really happened because of owing the mafia money for football bets. And finally, when the guy got caught, I could tell everybody, but it's like they didn't matter. I was carrying that inside. I was carrying all this shame. They had already forgiven me, or they knew that it was something, that there was more behind it than they knew. And that was hard to carry. It's just so much easier now after February 18, 2017, because it's not me. Everything belongs to Him. And we, even my board at My Pillow, we pray about our direction. I think that's one of the great things the president does now, with surrounded by these faith advisors and having people pray, having prayer done before these great things. I'll bet you he's probably our most praying president in history. I mean, to have God and have faith to guide you, rather than, like you say, when you transition from it's all me, I can do it. Don't get, there are wounds that come from childhood and stuff that drive us to be, everybody wants to be, hey, I'm okay, I'm somebody,
Right.
but you can to be happy in your own skin, to be happy inside. That's where it's at.
The stories that you just allude to, and I'm laughing hearing this. I mean, my God, what story? This is why you have to have this movie made. I mean, it's incredible. But gosh, my goodness, there's so many things we could talk about. We have been showing your book cover as you speak from time to time, and I'll pop it up over myself. That's fascinating.
Yeah, I can tell you that picture there, that bad Mike, that's from that intervention. The 3 drug dealers, I came out, I was up for 14 days straight. And I walked out of the bedroom. I was living in downtown Minneapolis. I was actually hiding out because I had a warrant out for my arrest of something I didn't do. I was found innocent on. But I'm hiding out, and I come out. There's all 3 standing there. I said, "What are you guys doing?" They go, "You've been up for 14 days. We're cutting you off." And I go, and I said, "What is this, an intervention?" They go, "Call it whatever you want." Well, 2 of them left. One of them sat there in the chair, and he was going to wait me out. I had a couple crack rocks left. And he finally went to sleep. I was out of crack. I was on the floor farming. Anyone that's ever done crack, the horrible things of paranoia and tweaking and farming. Well, I head down to the streets of Minneapolis, and I get down there, and I could not buy crack anywhere. I spent an hour down there. I came back upstairs about 3 o'clock in the morning, and he's waiting up for me. And he goes, "Give me your phone." And he said, "You're going to need that." He took a picture of me, and that's on the cover of the book here. He said, "You're going to need that for that book you keep telling us about you're going to write." And he said, "You've been telling us for years that this pill is just a platform for God, and you're going to quit someday, and you're going to come back and help us all out of addiction and lead everybody out of addiction." And he said, "We're not going to let you die on us." And I'll tell you that, two of them work for me, that they've all quit. Like I say, most of my friends, everybody, it has been for me, it's been very joyful for me inside to be able to fulfill that promise to them and bring them all through hope. I was their hope. I was their hope. They didn't have any other hope. Everything else, they're living in this world of wounds, that fatherlessness, all these things that happen and nowadays. And I was their hope because I kept telling them this, day after day. Hey, you guys, I know we're doing drugs. I know we're buying drugs, but someday I'm going to quit, and it's going to be amazing. I'm going to have this biggest platform ever to pull people and to help people. And they believe me, and now it's come to fruition. It's amazing.
You know what, as I listen to you, a couple of things occur to me. One, again, we see your enthusiasm, and this is the kind of thing that you kept pulling off one business miracle after another, and it was in part because of this natural enthusiasm that you have. You have an evangelical's a missionary spirit about you, I think. But how fascinating too, I think, for those who don't know, I'm not asking you what you're worth, but your success in business has been tremendous. And, you can go, and I just think, my goodness, the stories that you're telling us, and here now you're rubbing shoulders with the President of the United States. I would imagine you're rubbing shoulders with corporate leaders and others, and the life that you have led to bring you to this point is so diametrically opposed, I would imagine, to what these fellows have done, that I just wonder how, do you feel that as you look now at your life, and I don't think I've ever brought religion into my conversations. Normally we're talking about tax cuts and, government regulations.
Right.
But to what extent do you look at your life as if, you should have been dead 100 times before and killed 100 times before? To what extent do you think that, God always just had a plan for you, and you've just all along been an instrument walking your own road to Calvary?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what, for me, the miracle, my big miracle, I would get complacent with all the little miracles in my life, the near-death experiences and everything else. Well, what happened was, and by the way, my throat, the reason I'm hoarse, I've done 80-some interviews this week. If you'd have told me I'd be speaking out from the Rose Garden with the President of the United States and then doing 80 interviews over a 10-year period, over a 10-day period, I would have said that ain't happening. But what happened was in 2009, when I quit everything, you got to realize I didn't know anything about politics. I had never voted. And I come out of this, I'm going, and I didn't think politics affected our daily lives. And I go, wow, my friends are all unemployed. They lost their houses. You got a president giving money to an evil empire. All these things. I'm going, what's going on here? And then in the summer, then things started happening to me, like putting me in position. I was just concentrating on getting my company back together and the infomercial. And then all of a sudden, God put me in this other position. And for me, that's one of the biggest miracles in my personal life, going, wow, this was the calling all along, to help people in the massive for addiction or help our country or whatever it is. But in the summer of 2016, Donald Trump reached out to me before he was president. And I had a meeting with him, a private meeting on August 15, 2016. And I walked in his office and we talked about, it was like talking to a friend. It was just like, I'm going, wow, here's this billionaire and this great businessman, and here's just me, this ex-crack addict. But I had built my pillow up. We were just going straight up, and it was on every channel and everything. But we talked about, he said, Mike, he said, you make all your stuff here. And we talked about made in the USA, the companies. He wanted to bring manufacturing back. They said, whatever you do, don't tell them you were a crack addict. I said, that's one of the first things I said. I was a crack addict. And I said, I'm gonna have this big platform to help people in addiction. He goes, I know I can build a wall and keep the drugs out of our country. And he had all these great, pragmatic, common sense ideas. And I walked out of his office. I said, he's going to be the greatest president ever. But I talked to his employees, and I talked to them, and they all said that. I said, what I just seen, is that real? I talked to them, and they go, oh yeah, he's amazing, great leader. He's a great entrepreneurs helped each and every one, so like individually. I got back to Minnesota and I couldn't wait to tell the press and everything. I did a press release. Of course, I was called a racist and everything else just for having the meeting. And then I learned, I go, wow, there's more to this than, that's going on. This is, why am I getting slammed? Because I just met with them. And then then I learned all about politics. Well, anyway, the point I'm getting to, all of a sudden, I went to a national prayer breakfast, and I wasn't even saved yet, and I picked out of 12 people to pray with Ben Carson in a room, and I'm sitting there all nervous. I go, the odds of me even getting picked, right? And we end up becoming great friends. And I mean, all these things that have happened to me, I can see it unfold. Here's another one. I get to the White House. The first time I ever walked in the White House, the president, when he got to be president, he invited me there for a manufacturer summit for made the USA businesses. And I walked into that White House, and I remember as a kid, I was a big Elvis Presley fan. But one of the things I remember the most with Elvis was a picture he had, or a picture with him and Richard Nixon, when Richard Nixon was president. I go, wow, Elvis you got to be someone like Elvis to be able to meet a president. I mean, I know that stuck in my head. I walked into the White House and there's a picture, that picture's on the wall. And I'm going, wow. And here I am. And I walk through and they get to this big table and I look down, there's my name tag and there's no name tag here. And I said, whose name tag is there? Who's sitting there? They go, the president is. And I'm thinking to myself, you can't even make this up. I said, this whole journey that I'm on has to be God. And because it would be impossible. Now my friends see on national TV, here's me sitting, here's the president of the United States, and they're all going, what's this crack addict sitting up there, this ex-addict with the president? He's been right all along. Jesus is real. There's no way this is happening. And, and there was things like that he's put me in a position, and then to become friends with the president of the United States and to be able to help our country through hope and inspiration. And to, for me, right before this pandemic, I was going to come out with the biggest recovery network for addicts for addiction in history. So when we get through this, I am going to launch that, and it's going to be amazing. It's been 2 years, over $5 million I have into it. By the way, the book, I self-published my own book. I bought the paper. I have 3 million copies ready to go out because I wanted to go directly to the people so that money can go to the Recovery Network. Part of the proceeds to be able to employ tens of thousands of ex-addicts, that get through and help millions of people. So it's for me, every day I'll sit and go, is this real? It's like living inside of a movie, my life. It's like living inside of a movie, and it has been all my life, but it's a lot better now than it was before.
I wanted to say, first of all, the name of your book, or What Are the Odds? And on the line, as you just said, self-publish, and you're putting that money towards, as you just mentioned, again, a recovery. I want to talk, let's just divert just a little bit into politics, since we're the Illinois Channel. We often say we're the C-SPAN of Illinois, so we normally talk politics and policy. What are you... You've probably been approached to run for office. Do you ever think about running for office, number one? And number two, most of us are never going to meet any president. You have met Donald Trump. What would you say about Donald Trump, as you know, is the most, for whatever reason, divisive person, it seems like. Some people just can't tolerate the man. And it seems like so many friendships have been split over whether or not one supports Donald Trump. What would you say, what is the man like, the man that you've gotten to know, and I think you're friends with him?
Right, absolutely. And here's what people don't know about Donald Trump, that the guy is so down to earth. And I have met people from all walks of life, and he has no agenda. His agenda, from the first time I met him, when I'm going, he really cares about what I have to say. He's like a vacuum cleaner of knowledge. He's an amazing listener. And you're one-on-one. He just, I can't describe it. He's like he's just such a friend, and it doesn't matter who it is. He cares. When I go into the White House now, or I'll be somewhere, and I'll say, hey, how is it working here? He goes, Mike, he goes, yeah, every day, and this will be a security guard or whatever. He comes up, how's your day going? How's your day going? And he's got this amazing problem solution, but he's got a God-given gift to what it's going to manifest to. That's the business side. I think what people miss is his down to earth. Just, he's not, for a guy that, eats with 4 forks sometimes. This is what I used to call people, these, rich people that I would think they wouldn't have any time for me or anybody. He has time for every single person. And that's where, look what he's doing now with our, back then we all went in on faith when we voted for him, but now it's like proof of concept. And people, I love these press conferences now because people are getting to see a little bit of who he is. He's one of the funniest guys you'll ever meet in your life. I mean, he's so funny. It's he'll say, and it's not like a big sarcasm funny. It's like just talking, and he'll say, like, can you believe that? Like here, I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example of him. He pulls a pen out that when I was at the White House this last time with them CEOs, and he showed all of us, he said, these pens cost $2,000 the government pays on them. And he goes, and I can't believe it. They don't even work. He says, I went out and I got pens made for $2. That's what, or $2 to $5, whatever it was, that work, and they're functional and they look nice, and it was just what a waste of money for the people. And he's not only such a good businessman like that, but he's just he has the caring. I think one of the things people don't know too, I can't think of a better guy to have in charge during this pandemic, because I'll tell you, every decision that I've seen him make in the last 3.5 years, he makes it out of common sense and what it's going to manifest to help the people, not about politics. What I've learned about politics, it affects us every single day, all of our daily lives, but also politicians are making decisions based on their own agendas or based on their long-term political careers. And it's like, I just can't, when you ask me, would I consider running? Absolutely. I'm very much thinking about starting with Governor of Minnesota. It's pretty sad of me. Sad, I'm not announcing it, but I'm just saying that I see things in my own home state. When black unemployment was the lowest in the country before this pandemic in history, the highest black unemployment in the United States was Minneapolis, Minnesota. I see things in my own state that's not following the great things that's coming out of DC and coming out of this administration. So I've learned a lot, and I've gotten to know, like I say, friends with the president's family. It's really sad too, because I've been to Eric Trump. One day we were having lunch, and Eric said, Mike, when my dad and I, such a great family, they're just, but anyway, he says, when we came down that escalator, he said, my dad, he looked at me, he goes, well, we're going to find out who our friends are now, who our true friends are. And he said, so many they've lost and just lost these friends that were just, phony, had, greed behind them, whatever it was, turned on them because of their own agendas. But he said, Mike, we've made great friends too. And that's a blessing that we've made great friends like you. And that meant a lot to me to hear that they're replacing people around them that I think the president is, the people that he's surrounding himself with now are true friends. I'm talking about outside of the politics,
Right.
and that's, I can't say enough good things about the man and his God-given talent to be able to not use politics, just use common sense and to get things done. I left the White House, by the way, I want to tell people this. I left the White House. I was there 5 hours 10 days ago, and I'm an optimist. I'm the biggest optimist you'll ever see. But I left there and I couldn't think. I was 10 times more optimistic because I was hearing things inside. We had this round table, and here you hear from just one little story that that there's this governor that reached out to the president. It was going to take 6 months of red tape to get what he needed done. The president did it in 4 days. So he's making decisions like a CEO in real time and getting things done. We're at a time now where you got to make these decisions. You can't have bureaucracy stop anything right now. And it's so I left there and I'm going, wow, he's going to take in all the information he can and make these best decisions for you and I and everybody else in this country.
Let me ask, one of the things you say in your infomercials, and we won't have too much longer. I know you got to get going. By the way, as far as down to earth, it's so good of you to share your time as you are, and you're just as well a down to earth guy. You could be having your nose in the air with your success and just rubbing shoulders with the hoity-toity, but it's very good of you to make yourself available. And as you say, you talked to like 80 different people in interviews this week. One of the things you say in your commercial is that, I'd make it right here in my home state of Minnesota. Just talking about public policy before we leave a little bit. Why is that important for you to make your product? So many other business executives said we can make more money if we go to Vietnam or China or Mexico. You make it important. So let's talk about that. And any other, when you talk to the president, are there other things that could be done, not necessarily in the light of the COVID virus, but just in general, to help the small businessman that occurs you to go, wow, if only the government would do X, Y, and Z, it would really help the businessman hire more people or grow our business. So, we can get a little bit of insights from your business acumen as well as how it intersected with government.
Well, there's the stuff that I've learned, they said, you can't make the pillow here. You got to make it overseas. And so many things I learned. And I think United States here for your manufacturers are learning that right now, to be reliant on anybody overseas. I don't care if it's China or whoever. If you order product from overseas, because one of the products I do have is my sheets. Sheets can't be made in the United States here anymore because we don't have any weavers or spinners left. So, if you have to make something overseas and rely on them, and now you've ordered them, and now it takes anywhere from 60 to 90 days to get your product here, and your footprint changes, and you're carrying all this money, and then you get it, and it's not something you made yourself where you can go, wow, there's a mistake here. Then what do? It's not what it's cracked up to be overseas at all. And I think now you're going to have a flood of manufacturing come back to the U.S. It's going to be the right things too, things we need for medical supplies and stuff like that. But all the little entrepreneurs, let me tell you what I've done too. Since I've been through it, entrepreneurs, typically you get a product here and you get copied. You get copied by, as seen on TV, people or Amazon. They'll put all of a sudden, wow, there's a copy of my product or you invented, and all of a sudden it shows up in a box store. Wait a minute, I invented that, and there's nothing you can do. I'm telling you, you can't fight if you're this little guy. You can't fight those guys. And anyway, so what I did is I'm coming out. It's called mystore.com. And it's going to be a safe platform for entrepreneurs and these great USA products. And then if I go to the box stores, if they copy them there, I just say, that's fine. Then I won't sell you any of our products. And I've already had to do that because of my advertising. I'm able to help the little guy. I went up against big platforms like Google, Facebook. I went up against them all because I want to fight for what's right in this country, so we get rid of that too, where our products are getting stolen and taken from the guys that invented them. And I would say when we come out of this pandemic, the first thing I can say, if you're a business, get yourself safe right away, whatever that is, because the consumer is going to want to go into places that are safe and that have taken the precautions there. But also, just know that right before this pandemic, we had the biggest hope in history. I mean, entrepreneurs were taking chances because they could fall back on high-paying jobs. This thing about, okay, we have the highest unemployment ever. You know what this is? It's a big low curve here, but it's going to shoot up and it's going to make up tenfold for what happened here. And I'm serious. It's going to be the greatest economy and what's coming, you can even people, underlying people, everybody knows that because the stock market should have just went down to 10,000, but it's holding. You know why? Because just think if we didn't have that before this with our president, how he's brought us all these things together in a short 3 years to take bureaucracy out of things and to take regulations out. And so you're not restricted by things that you have to do this, this, and this to be able to be a great entrepreneur in service or an invention. And these are the great things that are coming. So make sure you have passion for what you're going to do, because you're going to be coming into the best time in history to do whatever you want to do. And I 100% believe that.
I think, it's the mark of a leader that you have to be positive. You have to think that you're going to succeed. You can't go forward with the idea that we're going to fail and that we're sailing on the Titanic. So I appreciate that attitude. Before we close out, just a couple of quick things. One, you self-published your book. I'm going to pop it up here over my face. It's called, again, What Are the Odds? From Crack Addict to CEO. You self-published that. If someone wants to buy that, and again, you're putting your proceeds into recovery, helping others recover, how can they order your book?
Well, today, and I'm doing it for the next couple of months, you can order it right at mypillow.com. And if you do order the book, we're giving you a $25 gift card from MyPillow because they want to help out. It's helped me so much too. And so you can get it there. And we like I say, the proceeds are going to help the most amazing platform ever when we come out of this. And the book itself, it took me you. I'll give your money back if you don't get something out of it. I mean, it's just the most amazing fiction story. And then you go, wait a minute, this is real? It took 7 years to write. I was so particular of every scene in it and every place in it. And Ben Carson wrote the foreword for me. We became friends, and that was nice of him. And but it's not just for anybody it's an addict. It's about entrepreneurship, hope, everyday thing. I was 20 years. I had a family, 4 kids, lived in a neighborhood. We were the place where everybody else sent their kids to come and play. That's who we were. And so everybody can get so much out of it. It'll be amazing.
I am so glad you wrote this book, because I've only scratched the surface of understanding your life. But the fact is, you are one of the most fascinating characters. The fact that we didn't know, we just see this guy on television. But my goodness, you are one of the most fascinating characters to ever come across. How you're still alive, God must have really had you in his hands. Yeah.
Yes,
and
for sure.
And it is to your credit again that you have just given us. You're an extremely busy man. You've just given us an hour of your time, and I think that speaks to the good man that you are. So, Mike Lindell, thank you so very much. We hope you appreciated the hour. We certainly did, and God bless you, and good luck on all your future endeavors.
Yeah, thank you, and God bless. And next time I'll get my voice back for TV. I'm losing it.
Thank you again, sir.
God bless you all, and we're going to get through this.
We will. All right. Goodbye, and have a great day.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel. And while you're at it, please leave us a comment. Thank you for watching.